Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I've been more than a little heartened to see that there's been a large number of the viewers and family who have been posting messages saying, celebrating New Black Media Month. April is certainly a good time to do it. After the last cruel licks of winter have gone away, April is a time of renewal. The earth is waking up again. And the same thing goes for our people. Led by the new voices of black media, we're starting to open our eyes again. We're shaking off the cobwebs and the old ideas of the past. We're also shaking off the cowards, traitors, and bootlicks who have been spouting the enemy's lies for all this time. Over 15 years ago, when I began this journey, I said the black media had two goals. The first, to take control of the social discourse within the black community, and the second, to elevate the debate. Now, take control of the social discourse means to introduce and push a new lexicon, a new vocabulary, get black people heading towards the right goals by getting us to use the right words. Rejecting the old talking points of the black baby boomers. Their language was given to them largely by white liberals or by bootlick activists, which is basically the same thing. The Jesse Jacksons, the Messy Jessies, and the Bayard Rustins and all the rest of their ilk. These guys, they just regurgitated whatever it was that their white liberal handlers told them to say, which meant that basically they were spouting government talking points. That's why we ran around in circles for so long. Those clowns were never going to lead us anywhere because their entire job was to lead us nowhere, get us running around in circles. We'll be sitting here marching as hard as we can. We're going to be just putting up all of this activity and accomplishing absolutely nothing. So we got our people to stop talking about jobs and get them to start talking about businesses. Stop talking in terms of love and peace and brotherhood and start talking in terms of power, wealth, and influence. Stop talking about civil rights and start talking about reparations, tangibles. Oh yeah, it was a shock for a lot of people at first. Because black people are used to bull-jiving around and they're not used to a conversation that's serious. They're not used to having a group of black people around them who are serious. And by the way, when it comes to the forces who we have to fight against to take back control of the social discourse in our community, that includes and is largely the result of the old dead black media. You see, there were a few black baby boomers and a lot of Gen Xers who were already suspicious of the Messy Jessies and the Al Sharptons and the Angela Davises and such, already suspicious of those guys and not really keen on trusting them. But white supremacy is sophisticated if nothing else, so they don't just believe in having one layer of bootlicks, they believe in having a few levels of these clowns. And one of those levels happened to be a phony, sock puppet black media, pretend black media component. This is where people like Ebony and Jet and Black Enterprise, and of course you also have your so-called black writers like Toni Morrison and Alice Walker and other assorted garbage. That's where these clowns came in, and their job was to be the ones who would be getting in front of us, and they would be pushing books at us and magazines at us and movies and TV shows, all meant to push black dysfunction. To indoctrinate and miseducate us with a perverted idea of what a dignified black community would be. They would bring out people who they claimed, oh, so-and-so went to UCLA, and so-and-so has been nominated for a Pulitzer, or been nominated for a Nobel Prize for Literature. And what are these people known for? What are they doing? They're spouting the exact same line of anti-black gibberish that you would be getting from a Messy Jessie or from any of the hacktivists. They would stand in front of us and they'd be wearing nice clothing, some of them, and they would occasionally drop a couple of $5 words, and this was supposed to give us the idea that these people are sophisticated and these happen to be our best and brightest, why we should be listening to them because, well, they know stuff. When the truth is, they only know what their white supremacist handlers tell them. And that brings us to the second part of our mission, elevating the debate. Now, what that means is to take the focus off of the foolery, coonery, and buffoonery that had previously dominated all arenas of the black discourse. I would love to say that before we came along, the black discourse was a comedy show, but that wouldn't be accurate at all. Before the emergence of the new voices of black media, black discourse was a horror show. All the Kundalini idiocy, all the find yourself a date and obsession and religious mumbo jumbo that had come to typify black discourse, all of that was quickly overtaken by our higher form of dialogue that we were promoting and pushing. To be bluntly honest, we didn't increase the amount of intelligence in the black discourse. We brought intelligence to the black discourse, because prior to us, it had been missing for the better part of 20 plus years. Not since the days of Dr. Clark and the other grandmaster teachers had anyone made it a point that they were going to make sure that we had the kind of talk that was being promoted by us. But we realized that we had gone past the need to simply be retaught our historical identity. It was now time to put this knowledge into practice. If there was any great contribution that the new voices of black media brought to the discourse, it was that we improved and elevated the tone and tenor of what was acceptable. We pushed and promoted a level of discourse that these other fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools simply couldn't keep up with, and we left them in the dust. When you start talking about power and you define it in specific terms, that's going to weed out the suckers and the 2-bit con artists pretty fast. When you make it where what you're saying is measurable, definable, and that it's something that's not simply left up to interpretation, it's something that people can actually look at this and say, we can see whether or not what you're saying works. Yeah, a whole lot of the folks who are trying to get by simply talking you to death and baffling you with BS, those people are going to start to slink back. Because then it's going to become clear who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. We ditched all of the ha-haing and all of the goofing off and guffawing. We were not interested in making you laugh. We were interested in making you think and making you act. We ditched the lowbrow gibberish. All of that garbage that we were getting from the Breakfast Schlubs and the Steve Harveys and others who had already, the Tom Joyners and such, who had conditioned black people themselves to believe that a 2-bit comedy routine is basically the best kind of discourse that black people could hope for. We couldn't hope for anything better than that. That was just what we were supposed to have. Nothing intelligent. Why? It's all supposed to be a laugh a minute, and it's going to be not just a bunch of stupid comedy, but lowbrow comedy, gutter comedy. Well, we were the ones who helped put an end to all that. We established a standard, one that was higher than any that had come before, and we have ingrained this practice into those who listen to us and who appreciate what it is that we have on offer. Now, why does it matter? It matters because the relationship between any media and those who partake of it is both symbiotic and, more importantly, reciprocal. As black media, we don't just put in our 2 cents. We also advocate for you. And as I've often said, a people who do not protect their advocates will have no advocates. And you can multiply that by 100 when you're talking about people who are under oppression. The purpose of a media, any media, is to promote a value system. But this is not a passive process. You can't just sit back and expect that simply because there's people out there speaking the truth, that alone means the truth will prevail. You are the force multiplier. Your involvement is going to be the single most important factor as to whether or not our media prevails. Don't believe it? Just go ahead and ask the now out of business Black News Channel. Our relationship is reciprocal and self-reinforcing. We don't just exist simply because, we exist because you wanted us to. We follow what you say, and in turn, you listen to the content we make because you realize that finally someone is saying it. This creates a virtuous cycle where you make your righteous demands known and we express it with as much force and eloquence as we can. We don't do mediocrity around here. The media, this black media, is your voice. But if you're going to have a voice, it has to say the right things. A media that speaks against your interest, that tries to highlight or otherwise emphasize the interest of everyone except for you, that's not your media at all. It's nothing more than a thinly veiled mouthpiece for your enemies. For so long, we've seen these pathetic attempts to undermine us. The white media has attacked our language, our talking points, attempted to kill our legitimacy. Oh, they wouldn't mention us by names because that would be too dangerous, too damning. So they thought that they would attack the words that we say. And why not? The white media has had it all their own way for so long. They figured they'd drag out a couple of fossils like N. Cobra or some of these empty-headed black academics who nobody listens to. Not even white people listen to them. Hell, not even the black baby boomers listen to them. That's the old playbook. We'll bring in some old, wrinkled-up, crusty, dusty nobody who claims to be a civil rights something or other, or we'll bring in some middle-aged or even early 30s so-called academic, and we'll tell you that they're an expert on something, or that this person writes for some magazine, or they happen to be on the faculty of University XYZ, and you should listen to them because we said so. That's what they thought they would do, and that apparently, like Pavlovian dogs, we would look and say, oh, they must know something, so we're going to listen to them. Nobody paid them any never mind. Their attempts to try to find a way to bring in some experts to delegitimize us didn't work, because our power doesn't come from a white media company. We don't have a white paymaster. You see, that's what the Joke Reeds and the CNNs and the Shahid Khans and the rest of the trash never understand and never will. Unlike the roly-polies and the Mark Lamont shills and the Charles Blows, the new voices of black media are not an invention of some white corporation. The white media didn't create us, so it doesn't have the power to destroy us either. Unlike the clowns over at The Rot and the Griot, we're not looking for a contract to get a job with the white media company. And unlike Roly-Poly, we're not looking for a government contract either. Our support comes from the black grassroots, the righteous masses whose voices have been ignored for far too long. The documentaries and media that the new voices of black media produce is the direct result of your support on all levels. And there's no substitute for the legitimacy of having the true ear and the true hearts of the people. Shahid Khan is a billionaire. For him, it was basically pocket change to come up with $50 million and hand it to some bootlicks so they could try to invent a black media network with a white boss, of course. It's a classic case of white power trying to choose winners and losers. They can arbitrarily decide that some loser nobody with no following and no support should be put at the front of the line. And then they give them enough money where they can get themselves a studio and they can get on the cocktail circuit and do some promotional stuff with a few minor celebrities, try to make them prominent. Because hopefully people will look and go, oh, I've heard of this person, and they seem to have themselves a content that's produced, has some sort of production value behind it. But that's as far as the con game gets. Because without the black grassroots support, all Black News Channel amounted to was nothing more than a vanity project for J.C. Watts. White power is realizing the limits of their ability to game the system. They're up against a relative handful of ideologues and thought leaders who are making a lot more headway for a lot less money. Meanwhile, they've got billionaires shoveling tens of millions into their operation, getting them a company office and a studio and a few cast-offs from cable news, and nobody cares. Black media told you this. The white media can just give you a platform, but what they can't just give you is legitimacy. The EBT crowd, they're already watching BET and TV None and Comedy Central. Those clowns aren't going to do anything for anyone. They're worthless for the network, and they're also worthless as advertiser bait. That you can't get them to watch anything, and even if they do, they're not actually going to spend their money with any of your advertisers because they don't have any money. That's the reason why you had that Prince Hair clown who was talking about, we basically just ran out of time. Dude, Shahid Khan could have bootstrapped these clowns for the next 10 years. Their numbers would barely have moved. Don't believe it? Take a look at doggone Roly-Poly Martin. Take a look at any of these idiots who call themselves trying to reverse engineer what the new voices of black media have done. See, another reason that you guys appreciate us is because of our foresight. We tell you what's coming long before it gets here. See, the bad guys have think tanks and such reading the tea leaves for them, but it's much easier for the white powers that be because they are close to the people who are actually causing events to happen, usually bad events. And it's much easier to predict that something's going to happen when you're sitting in the room with the richest and most powerful men who are plotting their next big power move. By the way, that's part of why you see so many members of Congress get into trouble for insider trading. That's when they try to make money off of these big moves that they know are coming. Someone needs to be keeping their ear to the ground for you, letting you know what the enemy's up to. No, that part of the operation, trying to figure out what's going to happen before it does, it's not sexy. It's not riveting fare, not like the celebrity gossip stuff. But your power and your survival doesn't depend on what hip-hop figure is beefing with whom. It's not based on childish nonsense like that. Right now, your survival and your power is based on the distribution of resources and influence in the society you live in. And the reality is, we don't have practically much of anything. It's time for that to change. The question is, what are we going to do about it? First thing is to establish that we must act to empower ourselves economically, and that we have a right to expect that from each other. A code cannot just be a code, it must also be enforced, and that's up to us. You appreciate us, and we know it, because you're here. Your love for us is real because our love for you is real. We're not doing this for a paycheck. There's no $250,000 paydays for promoting black people's interests, like there was for Roly-Poly when the Census Bureau gave him a check back in 2020. Nobody's getting rich doing this real work. There's no wealth in speaking up for and standing up for the poorest and most powerless people in the society. But it's still worth doing anyway, because this is how we're going to bring this wicked system of white supremacy to its end. Black empowerment is not a threat to white supremacy, it is the threat to white supremacy. That's why the bad guys thought absolutely nothing of tossing $50+ million down the toilet just to see if they could manufacture an antidote to what it is that we do. The white media has been trying and failing to reverse engineer their own cherry-picked artificial phony black media types. People who try to use a little bit of our verbiage, a little bit of our lingo, and then they go right into the standard bootlick spiel. They figure that they'll drop one or two of our words before they immediately go into the same old, and that black people would be fooled by this minor little bit of verbal window dressing. So we're setting the tone not merely within the black discourse, but also the white media discourse as well. And you can tell that our branding has been pretty tamper-proof. We call ourselves the new black media. The white media finds some bootlicking fools and calls them the new black press. We refer to ourselves as black thought leaders, and the white media refers to the LGBT organizations they talk about as the new black leaders. And why are they leaders? Well, why? Because the white media says so. The problem is, you didn't say so. So in closing, I'm going to ask a small request of the family. Please make sure that you take a few moments and tell your favorite new black media person that you appreciate them. Give them a like or tell people about them on your social media. That certainly helps. You can even put something on their books if you're so inclined. Something to put the white supremacist on notice. That we're not backing down, we're doubling down. And as I said in the beginning, the relationship between the new black media and you is reciprocal. So when you say new black media appreciation, you're not just saying what you appreciate. You're also talking about us, the spokespeople for black empowerment expressing our appreciation for you. We've managed to move the needle. We've managed to have an impact. But the work is not even half done. We've got so much farther to go. And that's the reason why we come to this place and we talk to each other. We are able to lean upon one another, draw strength from each other. And we're able to keep each other on code. We're in this for the long haul. So family and fellow soldiers, take a bow. When we talk about the new voices of black media, we may be the ones behind the microphone speaking the words and posting the messages. But this is a group effort. You are every bit as involved in this as we are. Because if you weren't here, we wouldn't be here either. And I'm sure that I speak for all of the new voices of black media, whomever your favorite person may be, when I say that we cannot possibly thank you enough for your support and for your involvement over all of these years. But the best way that we can honor you for sticking by us for all this time is to continue with the mission and not waver from it, not by one iota. Our people would not and should not have it any other way. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Sandra Bates, Stay Positive, Eve, The Brown Hornet, and Chaz. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.